Welcome to a Gallen of Questions. My name is Pat Gallen, and our next guest, if you are an Eagles fan, I am certain you have read his work. He's been in Philly, like a decade plus now? It's been a long time covering the Eagles. He now works for PHLY, formerly of The Inquirer, The Athletic. Zach Berman is with us in studio. ZB, what's up, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thrilled to be here. 13 years on
13?
Eagles beat. So, yeah, it's gone by quickly.
We're not young men anymore, are we? I keep forgetting that sometimes. So you're here because you just wrote a book, your second book, actually.
I'm here to hang out with you.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. But you did write a book. That's important. But I wanted to ask you, because you've been doing this for 13 years, and I'm around the team sometimes, not as often as you. Over these 13 years, what's the most difficult part of covering a team day in and day out? Because anymore, it's it's 365, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most difficult part is that you're always operating on an information deficit, right? So you're trying to find out more than you know, but you understand that you know less than you need. And I think so that there's so many players, number one. There's so many dynamics behind the scenes. Football is one of it's probably the only sport where most of what's happening you don't get to see, right? If you cover baseball, basketball, hockey, all the games are in front of you, right? And so I would say most of the interesting stuff in football is what happens Monday to Saturday. And so it's trying to fill that information deficit. And so you talk about those 13 years, it's become more difficult over those 13 years just because access is tighter.
Sure.
Players are maybe more reserved than they once were.
And in a different way, too, players don't necessarily need to lean on the media to get their message out the way they did 10, 12 years ago. It's just the landscape has changed so much.
You're absolutely right. And the consumer habits have changed, too, in that there's more places to find it. You can find it quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the nature of the job's changed. I mean, just, when you read the three places that I've covered the team, when I started at the Inquirer, the Athletic didn't exist.
Right.
When I was at the Athletic, PHLY didn't exist. So the industry keeps changing, and the players and the NFL kind of evolves with it.
So your new book, while you're here, is called The Franchise, Philadelphia Eagles, A Curated History of the Birds. It's actually your second book. I like this sort of tagline. There it is right there. Yeah. This thoughtful and engaging collection of essays captures the astute fan's history of the franchise, going beyond well-worn narratives of yesteryear to uncover the less discussed moments, decisions, people, and settings that foster the team's iconic identity. And you kind of just mentioned it, that it's harder to get that information that you're looking for. You're working at that deficit. But what are some of the less discussed moments that find their way into this book?
Yeah, first off, the publishing company wrote that description. I like it.
It's not bad.
I was thinking about that. So really, the interesting thing with this book for me is that I was able to widen the lens. When you cover the team every day, long term is like this Sunday's game, right? Yeah. And so you can kind of connect a lot of the dots. So for instance, this looks at a 25-year period from the time Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb were kind of the faces of the organization to now. And you can see how a lot of the decisions that were made then, things that might have seemed revolutionary at the time or at least different than the rest of the league, making trades, signing players to early deals. That's kind of become the norm. You think about the team-building philosophy on the lines of scrimmage. That was in place in 1999, and you kind of see how it evolved. And then you see kind of the cyclical nature of it, right? I mean, it was interesting to me. There was a day in June this year when Brian Dawkins hosted a golf tournament, and Jeremiah Trotter and a bunch of different players, Brian Westbrook, a bunch of different players from those early 2000 teams were there. Literally that day, there was on the NFL's transaction log, Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox, formerly, so they retire. Yeah. The Eagles have a mini camp that day. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is practicing. Cam Jurgens is in Jason Kelce's old locker, and you realize, as Fletcher Cox has said to me on a number of occasions, they're just running space. Yeah. And so to answer your question, it was really connecting a lot of the dots, reliving a lot of kind of the memories, the moments of the time. So I've covered the team for 13 years, but for the other 12 years of this, I was covering the New York Giants at the Star-Ledger, I was covering college sports at the Washington Post, or I was just growing up in the Philly area, consuming the Inquirer and CBS 3 and WIP, and you go on down the list, and so it was a chance for me to relive a lot of moments and memories and figure out how decisions were made, and I hope readers get to do the same.
Gallen of Questions. So we reach into the can. There's like 15 or so random questions. All, well, I shouldn't say all Eagles related, mostly. And then we'll see where we go from here. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Jump in there, Zach.
I don't have your length. I didn't start Northeast High School, so let me see what's here. Here you go. 11 best stadiums you've been to.
Well, that's just the number of the question. I numbered it. Okay. But that's a great question. Name all 11 stadiums. No. What's the best stadium you've
ever been to? Well, Eagles fans won't like this when I say AT&T Stadium in Texas.
I had a feeling you might say that.
In Dallas, it's every time you're there, it seems like a big event. But I will say honestly, the LA Stadium last year, SoFi was an awesome experience. And then just from like the I used to cover college basketball, and when you cover a game in like Cameron Indoor Stadium, that's really cool. But I know I'm mentioning a bunch. I'm not pandering to the audience here. I'm being absolutely honest. To me, going to a game at the Palestra is my favorite place to go. So
I love the Palestra.
So this has been to not covered. So I'm going to say the Palestra.
What do you think is Howie Roseman's biggest regret?
Good question. I mean, I would probably say Howie Roseman's biggest regret from a draft. If you look at passing on Justin Jefferson,
thought you might say that,
to take Jalen Reagor, that's probably the draft decision. But there were probably things like early on in Howie's tenure from an interpersonal perspective that he's improved upon that I think, I don't know if I would frame it as regret, but a learning experience. I think early, Howie was so young when he got the job, real talented, but there's a lot of different dynamics inside a building, and I think some of the interpersonal dynamics, I certainly can't speak for Howie, but I imagine that is something that like he's probably learned during his career.
All right, you're up next.
Absolutely. Here we go. So I know not to read the number here.
Yeah, no number.
Which Eagles player looks like he would throw a good dinner party?
Yeah.
So this is a good question here. I mean, Jason Kelce, you'd have to say is fun.
Sure.
I think Connor Barwin has real good taste.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So that, and then, but you know what? I need to go with like an offensive lineman because they can really eat.
There's going to be a great spread if one of them is involved.
Exactly. So I will go.
But it's got to be it's a dinner party we're talking now, so it's classy. We got blazers. We're not
you know what? I wasn't there, but I saw Jordan Mailata's wedding, like some of the Instagram photos from there.
Yeah.
And I think I know Jordan has good taste in food.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating personality. It's going to be fun there. He can sing at the dinner party, so you're going to have good music. And it will have kind of like the international flair. He was in Italy this past off season, so he knows good food. Australia has good food, so I'm going to go Jordan Mailata.
I feel like any offbeat Eagles question you could probably answer with Jordan Mailata.
Well said.
He checks a lot of boxes for sure. All right, let's see here. Was the hit on Devontae Smith dirty?
It's easy for me to. So the succinct answer is yes. I thought it was a late hit. The nuanced answer is that this happened so fast during a game.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Saints defender specifically knew, that he was unconscious or that, or I shouldn't say unconscious, that the helmet was coming off. Now, if it is true that he spit on him afterwards, then that is dirty.
Yeah.
I don't have confirmation of that. I've seen like these Zapruder film of it, basically.
Sure.
But I think in the moment, these things are happening bang, bang, so it's hard for me to say.
This has been in our group chats now with people saying, well, this is football, this is what happens. Other people are saying it's a dirty hit, so it doesn't seem like there's any right or wrong answer here.
Next one here. Is this you or me?
That's you. Yeah, you go. I'm just mixing them up.
What excites you most about Kellen Moore's offense? I think the diversity of the offense, the moving people around before the snap, playing, Devontae Smith, the amount of times he played in the slot, having different answers to what you see on defense. I look, the Eagles had an awfully successful offense in 2022. I think the way it was kind of structured, though, was our players are better than your players. We'll beat you one-on-one, right? And I think there are more answers here than there were in the previous offense.
How do you think Jalen Hurts is taking to it so far?
Well, he needs to he needs to turn the ball over less.
Sure.
But the efficiency jumps out to me. You look, he's over 70% passing in these past 2 games, and that I think is a credit to what to how he's functioning in the offense.
I love it. What can Nick Sirianni do to clean up his mistakes?
So mistakes in terms of the game management?
Yeah, maybe game management,
clock
management.
I actually don't think so. I might be in the minority in the city in that I like the aggressiveness on fourth down. The one thing I'll say is that you need to be consistent with your decision making. If you're making data driven decisions, there's an expression, you need to marry the numbers, not date the numbers, and I would marry the numbers there. In other words, look, I've never. I coach my son's flag football team. I've never coached in the NFL, so I don't know what it's like to be there in a fourth down.
Yeah.
But I played my fair share of blackjack in my life,
sure.
and I know that if you're following the numbers, let's say if you're hitting on 16 against the 10, and you lose that hand. You don't change the next hand because you lost the previous hand.
Sure.
You adhere to the numbers. So I think if he's going to follow this strategy, be consistent with it.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
I probably would have gone for a few of those fourth downs, but I think being even keeled on your decision making is important. All right, scale of 1 to 10, concern level for Saquon Barkley's overuse.
2.
Not much.
Saquon Barkley's here to be used.
Yeah.
Look. The Eagles aren't thinking on like a 5-year plan for Saquon Barkley. He signed a 3-year contract. I think he's going to be here for two of those 3 years, and I think the Eagles are going to maximize all $13 million per year while he's here. He's here to carry the ball. Now, if you're worried about him being run down at the end of the season, I think that's overstated.
Okay.
I think they'll take care of him during the week.
Mm-hmm.
He's here to touch the ball a lot. I say this tongue in cheek. The ball's not heavy, right? He can carry it a lot, and I think that's what they're going to lean on him. And
it's like you give the ball to Kenny Gainwell 7 times, or give 5 of those back to Saquon Barkley. I think, he's here for one reason. You're right about that. I skipped you. You'll take the next one. The Superdome is often called the loudest place to play. What's the loudest game you've ever covered?
I'll say this. Again, I might be pandering here. The NFC Championship game in January 2018, Eagles-Vikings. So that's not a road venue. That's a home venue.
Yeah.
But that before that game was like it was palpable. You could feel it. And so I will go with that. And then I covered. I went to Syracuse, but the Carrier Dome's called the Loud House.
Yeah.
And there are some times, like from a basketball perspective, when you have 35,000 plus and they're cheering, and that gets really loud.
That's pretty cool. All right, you're up next.
Grade Vic Fangio's defense through 3 weeks, so there might be some recency bias here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with B+. His defense was outstanding against the Saints. I think the first 2 weeks they showed some warts. But the red zone, so I believe a lot in the situation of football, red zone and third down. And red zone and third down were keeping them in games during those first 2 weeks. And then what you saw against the Saints was an outstanding game plan.
Yeah.
I do have concerns about the pass rush overall. But from a schematic perspective, I like what I see from Vic Fangio.
What did they do in week 3 that really stood out to you that kept the Saints from going off like they had the first 2 weeks?
Well, first off, they made Jalen Carter pretty pissed. Am I allowed to say pissed off?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Yeah. He was fired up in that game. Whatever they did, whatever they said to him before that game, bottled up. It was the best he's played since he's been with the Eagles. So that's one. But I think there were different things they did with their fronts, specifically against some of those outside zone runs that you saw. You saw it almost looked like a 6-man front at times.
Yep.
That they did. They played Bryce Huff less on rundowns. They bounced Milton Williams outside. That was another thing they did. So I think they did some good things with their personnel. They were prepared for that game.
It sure seemed like it. I didn't put a Bryce Huff question in here because I didn't want to pile on the poor guy. To win a Super Bowl this year, blank is the most important thing the Eagles need to do.
Well, it's cliche to say stay healthy,
Okay.
but you're already seeing that tested. Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They need those guys to stay healthy.
Sure.
But I think in order for them to make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, they need to be outstanding on the lines of scrimmage. And the reason I say that is because I'm confident in their skill position players when
Sure.
healthy. I'm confident in I think Jalen Hurts can do what it takes. But I think when they're really good, it's because they're really good on the line of scrimmage. And so the offensive line needs to stay healthy, and the defensive line needs to show more from a pass rush perspective. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contender if they can't consistently get to the quarterback.
Well stated.
Has the start of the season changed your outlook on the Eagles? Good question. No, it's pretty consistent with what I anticipated. I did not think they would lose that Falcons game. I thought the schedule was soft early in the year, and I thought they would build up some momentum. But I think the way they're playing is probably consistent with what I expected. The big difference is A.J. Brown not being in the lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, with A.J., I expect them to be a dominant type, he's one of the 5 best receivers in the NFL.
Sure.
You take that out, that affects you. But I think the way they're playing, I guess I'm kind of rambling here. I thought they would score more in the 30s than they did.
Okay.
I thought what you saw against Green Bay would be more
agreed.
what they would be. Obviously, 15 points last week against the Falcons. 21 points?
Sure.
I don't think that's enough, and I think they need to be closer to the 30s.
Some shootouts would be good for this team, I think. Is Quinyon Mitchell exceeding expectations?
Well, if you expected a lot of him, he's meeting them. And if you expected a rookie, some rookie hiccups, then he's exceeding them.
Yeah.
He looks like he belongs, and he's looked like he's belonged from day one. I thought coming in, I really liked what I saw when he was at Toledo. But admittedly, I said it's at Toledo,
Sure,
right?
right.
And let's see what it's like when he plays high-level competition on a consistent basis. He's a little bit of an older prospect. I tend to like, if you're making that type of early investment, more 21, 22-year-old from a developmental curve. But he's answered the bell. You see the physical attributes.
Yeah.
You see the mental toughness. And you see the swagger. I mean, you've heard the story.
Absolutely.
And so I think that, he's exceeded my expectations, and he's a legit starter for this
The way
team.
he makes decisions on the fly and breaks to the ball that quick, I mean, that's special, and it's exciting. All right, let's see if we can cruise through. We got a few more. Is Jeff Stoutland a miracle worker?
He's an outstanding coach. Now, I think Jeff Stoutland's an outstanding coach. I get heat sometimes for saying this because there's almost like you put Jeff Stoutland in the Hall of Fame already. I give a lot of credit to the players. Jeff Stoutland does an amazing job. But the reason, like Jordan Mailata is Jordan Mailata because he's built well and he worked really hard to get to this point. Jeff's done a great job with guys like Fred Johnson this year, right? You see getting him ready. When Fred Johnson, Tyler Steen go in mid-game, it's a credit to Jeff Stoutland.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the offensive linemen deserve a lot more of the credit than they get sometimes. I hear like when Mekhi Becton plays well or Jordan Mailata plays well, it's all Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland deserves so much credit, but the players are out there doing the work, and I think the players deserve the credit.
So not quite miracle worker,
Yeah,
but we're headed in that direction.
Helps bring them to the miracles for sure.
If you were in a street fight, which Eagles player would you want with you?
Ooh, well, I wouldn't want all of them, right? Because I'm not winning any street fights as it is. But is this current roster or all
Let's
time?
go current roster, yeah.
Okay.
Look around that locker room. Who's
current roster? I could say Jordan Mailata again.
Yeah, right? See?
Jordan Davis. I mean, I think Jalen Carter.
Jalen
Carter. All time, during my time, or at least my 13 years covering the team, Clifton Gaithers is the guy I would say.
Really?
He was like Michael Vick's bodyguard. He was a 6'8" offensive lineman under Chip Kelly in 2013. Clifton Gaithers, and then Jason Peters is the bodyguard. So
he's the
I would
bodyguard
want to
for a
bring
reason.
Jason Peters with me.
I will say, lesser known, he's a backup. He hasn't really played, I don't think. Nick Gates.
Yes,
with the long hair and the tattoos. He doesn't wear gloves. He's an offensive lineman. I look at him, I'm like, I could go to war with that guy.
Yes.
All right, last one. Most pleasant surprise on the Eagles roster.
Most pleasant, well, Zach Bond.
Okay, that's a great one,
besides the initials that he has, which makes him
ZB.
Yeah, I would say when they signed him, I was skeptical in the sense that he had 4 years in New Orleans. You would think during those 4 years they would have said, all right, we'll let you be the inside backer.
Yeah.
But he's come here. Vic Fangio's kind of unlocked him. The versatility that he has, you saw he was used almost like an edge rusher in this past game. In week 1, he was all over the field in Brazil as an inside backer, and he brings a physicality, he brings athleticism, brings intelligence to the position.
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions about the Eagles linebackers coming into the year. I thought they would get more from Devin White than they have, but Zach Bond, who was a priority signing, real good job by the front office identifying him, good job by the coaching staff preparing him, then it's a credit to Zach Bond for stepping up and rising to the occasion.
Might be one of the biggest surprises, not only with the Eagles, but over the entire NFL right now. Pretty incredible, the numbers he's putting up. Zach, tell the people about your book before we go.
I appreciate it. The franchise Philadelphia Eagles, A Curated History of the Birds. It's available wherever you buy your books. You can also reach out to me directly on social media if you want a signed copy.
Hey.
I'm sorry, this camera
That's
here.
the one here, yeah.
Okay, I was looking at that one. Here you go. at ZBerm on X, Twitter, Z_Berman on Instagram. If you reach out to me, we'll figure that out. But please, I hope you get it, but I hope you read it and enjoy it because you'll be able to relive a lot of these great memories and moments and learn how some of the decisions were made from these past 25 years.
ZB, thanks so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, you got it.